Government forces in Afghanistan claim to have pushed back a new Taliban offensive on the city of Herat. Reports also suggest that dozens of Taliban fighters have been killed in Lashkargah. The Belarus sprinter, who refused to return home because of fears about her safety, says that a phone call from her grandmother persuaded her not to go back. She added that her criticism of officials was purely sporting, not political. Barcelona Football Club has just announced that its star footballer Lionel Messi is to leave. In a statement, the club said that despite having reached an agreement, it was impossible to come up with a deal which suited both the player and the club. And in the UK, fully vaccinated people returning from France to England, Scotland and Northern Ireland will no longer need to quarantine from Sunday. This adds to a number of other changes announced by the government in recent days.
In Iran, Ebrahim Raisi is sworn in as president and calls for the lifting of international restrictions on his country. Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga announces expanded emergency measures as new cases of COVID-19 reach record highs during the Olympics. Australia's government promises native Australians $800 million in aid, including payments to native children who were taken from their families. And the head of the U.S. Agency for International Development calls on Ethiopia to ease a blockade of aid to the country's Tigray area, which faces a severe hunger crisis.
We begin here in Tokyo, where a new record is casting a pall over the city currently hosting the Olympic Games. The capital saw its highest daily tally of coronavirus cases ever on Thursday, topping 5,000. Nationwide, cases exceeded 15,000, marking a record high for the second day in a row. Tokyo officials confirmed 5,042 new daily cases. As cases continue to surge across the country, experts are expressing a greater sense of crisis and urgency. Tokyo and 5 other prefectures are already under a state of emergency. 5 additional prefectures are taking intensive antivirus measures in limited areas and periods. The government has expanded the quasi-emergency measures to 8 other prefectures from August 8th to the 31st. The minister in charge of the coronavirus response told the advisory panel the situation has entered a new phase.
Many parts of Japan are seeing an unprecedented and extremely rapid increase in the number of new coronavirus cases.
He said the number of seriously ill patients has also doubled over the past 2 weeks, putting the healthcare system under severe strain. Nishimura said the focused measures would continue to include asking bars and restaurants to stop serving alcohol in certain regions. He said the government will work to ensure that necessary medical services are provided. It will also urge people not to travel during the summer holidays. The head of the panel says the government still has work to do to stop the spread of the virus.
We basically agreed with the government's plan, but some members said a nationwide state of emergency should be declared. However, even the areas currently under the state of emergency haven't seen enough improvement. The government should communicate a more convincing message and antivirus measures.
Omi said if cases continue to climb, the government may have to consider changing or creating laws to introduce stronger measures such as lockdowns. The South Korean government plans to stream live video of islands in the Sea of Japan, and the Japanese government is protesting. Japan calls the islands Takeshima. South Korea controls the islands. Japan claims them. It says South Korea is illegally occupying them. The islands are called Tokto in South Korea. South Korea's Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries says a website will start showing live video of them on Friday. The ministry says it hopes to heighten interest in the islands by enabling people to see them at any time wherever they are. It also says the live stream will help people who plan to visit the islands by showing the local weather. The Japanese Foreign Ministry's Asian and Oceanian Affairs Bureau Chief Funakoshi Takehiro lodged a protest with the South Korean embassy in Tokyo. He said the islands are an inherent part of Japan's territory in terms of history and international law. He described South Korea's live stream project as totally unacceptable and extremely regrettable. He urged the South Korean government to drop it. Japan's Kawai sisters achieved their goal of both striking gold in women's wrestling. Kawai Risako won the freestyle 57-kilo category on Thursday to match younger sister Yukako, who won 62-kilogram gold the day before. Risako defeated Irina Kurachkina of Belarus 5-0 in the final. Yukako cheered her sister on from the stands. Afterwards, Risako said she worked hard for so long to win gold alongside her sister. She was competing in a lower weight class this time after her first gold at 63 kilos in Rio. In 2019, the 26-year-old defeated compatriot and four-time Olympic champion Icho Kaori to become the new face of the sport in Japan. Also on Thursday, athletes in the men's 20-kilometer race walk hit the roads in the city of Sapporo. The event was held over 800 kilometers north of Tokyo to avoid the capital's fierce heat. The walking and marathon events were scheduled to take place in Tokyo, but in the fall of 2019, the International Olympic Committee announced they'd all be moved to a cooler, more northerly city. However, just before today's race, temperatures in Sapporo were still over 30 degrees Celsius. Massimo Stano from Italy managed the conditions best to finish ahead of Japan's Ikeda Koki, with world number 1 Yamanishi Toshikazu taking the bronze. The rest of the race walk and marathon events will be held either early in the morning or in late afternoon. Both men's and women's marathons will start at 7 a.m. And the intense heat is affecting other sports as well. The kickoff in the women's football final has been pushed back by a full 10 hours. It had been scheduled to start at 11 a.m. at the National Stadium on Friday. Instead, it goes ahead at 9 p.m. in Yokohama. These Olympics welcomed several brand new events to the Games, and Thursday saw 3 of them crown their debut champions. In karate, Spain's Sandra Sanchez Jaime won the sport's first Olympic gold in kata, a solo version with points awarded for skills including accuracy, speed, and balance. Shimizu Kiyo of Japan won the silver. She also lost to the same opponent at the 2018 World Championships. And the first ever gold was awarded in men's sport climbing. It combines 3 disciplines, speed, bouldering, and lead, to create an all-around test of agility, problem-solving, and endurance. The gold went to Spain's Alberto Gines Lopez. Skateboarding's final day meant airtime for the men's park event. 18-year-old Keegan Palmer won gold for Australia. Olympic skateboarding features 2 events, park and street. Japan won gold in both men's and women's street and took the women's park in a successful games for the home skaters. Australian athletes are under fire for damaging their rooms at the Olympic Village in Tokyo and being drunk and rowdy on their flight home. The Australian Olympic Committee said some rugby and football players drank excessively and caused problems during their flight last Friday.
This behaviour clearly is unacceptable and does not meet the standards set by this team.
The governing bodies, Rugby Australia and Football Australia, apologized and launched investigations. While the athletes were in Tokyo, they damaged the cardboard beds in their rooms and put a hole in a wall. People in Hiroshima are marking 76 years since the world's first atomic bombing. An annual ceremony will take place Friday morning at the city's Peace Memorial Park. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide and representatives from about 90 countries will attend what will be a more subdued event because of coronavirus measures. The number of people in attendance will be about 800, less than 1/10 the size before the pandemic. A list of more than 320,000 victims will be placed inside a cenotaph. It includes the names of people who survived the bombing but have died over the past 12 months. Participants will offer a moment of silence at 8:15 a.m. That's the exact time the atomic bomb was dropped on August 6, 1945. It killed about 140,000 people by year's end and exposed many more to harmful radiation. This year's ceremony comes weeks after 84 people won a lawsuit and were officially recognized as hibakusha, or survivors. The court upheld their claim that they suffered health problems after being exposed to radioactive rain outside of an area designated by the government. Hiroshima Mayor Matsui Kazumi will deliver a peace declaration at the ceremony. He is expected to urge the government to join a UN treaty that bans nuclear weapons. The treaty went into force in January. Nuclear powers, as well as Japan and other countries protected by the U.S. nuclear umbrella, have not signed it. An NHK survey of Hiroshima's survivors has found that more than half hope their personal records will be kept in public institutions as visual reminders of their experiences. NHK polled 50 survivors known as hibakusha. Half of them said they own materials related to the bombing that they want handed down to future generations. They include diaries, photos of deceased family members, and testimonies they gave at international conferences for the elimination of nuclear weapons. But some respondents said they had gotten rid of any materials that reminded them of what they suffered. More than 80% of the respondents named the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum as an appropriate place to store such records. This 85-year-old survivor, who has long supported fellow hibakusha living in foreign countries, keeps letters from them and essays by children about what they learned.
Without our personal records, our calls over the years to eliminate war and nuclear weapons will disappear. We hibakusha don't live that long, but the records will remain as heritage.
Analyzing materials after a long time has passed can shed light on different aspects of an incident. The records of atomic bomb survivors are unforgettable.
An expert on archival science says prompt efforts are needed to record the hibakusha's views, create a system to sort and store their records, and ensure funding. A curator at the Hiroshima Peace Museum says one potential challenge is storage, as the museum runs out of space. But he adds cooperating with related organizations could lead to solutions to make sure the survivors' stories are never forgotten. And from 8 a.m. Japan time, we will take you live to Hiroshima for our coverage of the annual memorial ceremony in a special edition of NHK Newsline, Hiroshima Peace Memorial Ceremony 76 years on. So please stay tuned to that.